Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us today at the Tools and R&D Services panel here at RESI. We have 5 amazing panelists here today who would love to share with you their thoughts and insight in this space. This panel will be moderated by Tad Weems from Allegiant Technologies. Tad, I'll let you take it away from here.
Thank you, Joey, and welcome everyone to the RESI Tools and R&D Services Venture Capital panel discussion. If you think you're in the wrong place, I'd encourage you to stay around because I believe you'll find this panel of experienced VCs providing insight not only into the life science tools and services space, but also into the world of venture capital decision-making. I'm Tad Weems, and I'd like to say good morning to Nat, Daniela, Tom, and Gary, representing Thrive Bio, BC23, Dynamic, and Coda. They're not only 4 of the legendary VCs in the tools services space, especially early stage, but they're all really nice, insightful people that it's my pleasure to know. It's always nice to start with a little background and information about our organizations to set our frame of reference. So with that, I'll start out. I'm a chemical engineer by training. Currently, I'm managing director of Agilent's venture team. As some of you may know, Agilent's about a $5 billion revenue tools and services company serving the analytical and clinical laboratories worldwide, which makes me the strategic investor on the panel. We have about 30 partner companies spanning from under 5 people working on seed rounds to companies with a couple of hundred people looking for more advanced rounds and eyeing the public markets. So let's get on with the true talent here. Nat, you want to go first?
Sure, quick introduction. Hi, I'm Nat Bren, partner at VC23 and Vital Venture Capital, both venture firms that have focused on life science tools and other hardware. For about the last 13 years, some of our notable portfolio companies are 10x Genomics and Twist Biosciences, where we were the first outside investors, and a number of other tool companies. We generally invest early stage, so seed rounds and then follow on from there. So delighted to be on the panel. Thank you.
Great. Around the stage, Gary, how about you next?
Sure. Thanks, Tad, and thanks, Resi, for having me join. I'm a venture partner with Coda Capital, which is a San Francisco-based fund with about a little over $1 billion in assets. We have a growing interest in the life sciences and healthcare. And my background is in genetics, and prior to Coda, I was with an angel investment group called BioInflection Point Partners, and prior to that, I worked in business development for companies like Agilent and Applied Biosystems and Affymetrix. It's a multi-stage fund, and we're interested in, meaning we invest from seed all the way through public companies. We've been a long-term investor in Mission Bio and a number of other life science firms, and I'm very pleased to be here.
Great. Daniela, how about you? Good. Oh, and Daniela, for some reason you're muted still. We can see your lips move. There you go.
Does that work?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Different mic. Good. Great to be here. Thanks so much for the invitation, Tad and Resi. Daniela Kranjak. I'm founding partner at Dynamic Capital. We are a growth and venture capital fund focused entirely on life science industrials. That's a bit of a niche, as we all know. What's important about what we do, we're not just capital. We supply entrepreneurs with strategic support, guidance, business development and strategy as well. We are focused especially on life science industrials, so the tools, technologies, and services that enable discovery, development, and manufacturing, with a slight lean towards manufacturing technologies. We are a fund focused, again, we're a bit stage agnostic. We span from seed through Series A and B is kind of our sweet spot. We've done a few notable deals like Rooster Bio, Flow Design Sonics, Selfie, and a few others, and Visagenics as well in the AI and machine learning space. We're a team of 6 right now, and we're actively deploying. By background, I'm a chemical engineer, was a co-founder at Wave Biotech, which was the first disposable bioreactor system, commercialized that product line, and subsequently was leading business development and responsible for some M&A and integration work at GE Healthcare, which is now the Cytiva business. So I've been in the industry for a long time, and happy to be here.
Great, thanks. Tom?
Hi, thank you very much, Ted and RESI. So my name is Thomas Farr-Plorsch. I've been on the investing side, the management side, and the entrepreneur side. On the investing side, I started a fund in China with the city of Shanghai. And my first investment, since we all like to talk about the ones that did well, my first one was in a company, then $8 million in revenue, and I was the first outside non-Chinese investor. And it was in a tiny company called Wuxi Farm Tech, now Wuxi App Tech. But I've mostly been on the entrepreneurial side, and that's probably maybe a point of view I can represent a bit on this panel. I'm currently CEO of Thrive Bioscience, where we're filling the need for better imaging, analytics, and automation for cell culture, tissue culture, stem cell culture. For the first time, we're producing genomics quantity of data, but for live cell biology. We're currently selling 2 instruments that capture thousands of images and analyze them. Other companies, I've started 11, include, for example, Exact Sciences, where we've developed a alternative or replacement for colonoscopy. And I've started several other tools and device companies. I've had 5 multi-billion-dollar exits. Thank you, Ted.
Great, thanks, Tom. Thanks so much, everybody. I'd like to remind the audience that you can use the chat or the Q&A options to reach out to us with questions. We'll be monitoring these in real time throughout the session. So I thought we'd start out with some more visionary thoughts and then work back to some more practical things. So when you think about the future of tools, R&D services, or life sciences in general, what are you really excited about for our industry at the moment? And is there anything that's caught you unaware in the last year or so? Let's start with Gary. How about?
Sure. Yeah, lots of things to be excited about in the life sciences and healthcare. Some really strong themes developing. Computational biology, anything to do with data-driven analyses. We have a flood of tools that provide more data, more quantitative data on proteins, on nucleic acids. And then the use of the computational tools to analyze this data. Personalized medicine, which has been around for, the term has been around for a while, but it's certainly coming into the forefront of tailoring treatments and diagnostics specific to the indication and the patient. And also a third theme that is particularly interesting is medicine at the edge, what we call, which is remote monitoring, remote testing, remote care. And certainly that's been accelerated in this pandemic. Yeah, all these areas are under tremendous development and of tremendous interest.
Great. Daniela, you have anything?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I would say what's exciting about the space is just the recognition of and maybe a renewed interest because of the recognition of what was accomplished in 2020 around COVID vaccines and therapeutics. And, you know, I think for us, just observing the new interest from incoming investors, you know, people who are getting excited around life sciences and biopharma more generally, The tools space has long been underserved. We know that well. I think everybody on this panel knows that well. And so it's just really great to see that renewed interest and that excitement around these critical enabling technologies, right? Because those are fundamental for biotech and pharma to do everything from discovery to development to manufacturing. So I think I would just echo a couple of the points that Gary highlighted. For us, it's really predictive platforms, data and AI. I mean, I think to some extent AI and machine learning are being applied already to discovery in some areas, but we haven't really had the dramatic growth yet in that space. And I think that's to come, and how that applies to bioprocessing as well, and how that translates into bioprocessing is another exciting area.
Great. And Tom, from the company side, are you all seeing?
Sure. So, Ted, to a certain extent, I am pursuing what I think, in my 11 companies I've started, what I think are the most exciting areas. And so there is a little bit of overlap with what I do currently. So I think that 3D cell culture and tissue culture are extremely exciting. I mean, right now we have this incredible gap between cell lines, and often immortalized cell lines, as opposed to patient-specific cell lines, and then animals, mice. And it's a big gap. And with organoids and spheroids and other kinds of 3D cell structures and more ex vivo work, we're going to learn a lot. Like anything, we're still figuring out what it means. When we look at a drug effect on cells that are now in 3D versus 2D. So there's a lot to be done, but very promising. AI data mining as applied to biology is a lot of the reason why we started Thrive. And we're producing enormous amounts of data, as well as providing AI tools. Actually, the first 3 companies I started were all AI companies. So bringing data and analytics and data mining, particularly to cell biology, which has been a bit behind, in fact, I'd say because of a lack of tools, is exciting to me. And I guess the third, more general umbrella, I've gone from kind of specific to less specific. And the least specific is generally reproducibility, improving reproducibility of research through greater tools that are analyzing in many ways, with many different kinds of instruments and assays, so that we understand what it is that we are researching and have more comparable results. I think is a necessary area, because such a high percentage of research otherwise is not comparable, is not valid. Great.
Nat, that doesn't leave a lot of space for you, but you got anything else for us?
Sure. I can add a little. All good thoughts by my fellow panelists. I think if anything, 10x Genomics showed us that we can make giant leaps forward with just kind of basic new understanding. Going from DNA and RNA sequencing to single cell identification. I'm excited about a number of other areas that we still need really good tools in. Understanding epigenomic modifications, understanding protein interaction with DNA and RNA, understanding proteomics better within the actual tissue and cells. Those are metabolomics, and understanding them better. All of those areas, I think, have massive opportunity over the next decade for better tools and really better understanding of biology. And then, you've also got spatial tools that are coming out, and just a lot of things that I think are really going to increase our understanding and therefore lead to better drug development, et cetera. Other tools in fields like synthetic biology, I get excited about, and also in cell therapy and gene therapy, which I think are going to be major areas over the coming decades.
And so it's good to hear that none of us will be out of jobs in the near future, because there's plenty of opportunity out there for all of us, I think. So thanks so much. And for anyone who's watching me, I am taking notes furiously, because there are some areas here that we really should pay more attention to internally as well. So thanks for the additional things. So let's change gears a little bit. Daniela brought up COVID, and let's think about over the last year and how it's changed our industry, both from the company side and from the investor side. Do you have any thoughts on how our space has been impacted by COVID? How have your processes changed? And thinking about how things are going forward, has this changed how you're going to do business in the future? Daniela, let's start with this, because I know this has significantly impacted your frequent flyer miles. So, yeah.
all of ours collectively. Yeah, grounded. I mean, look, I think it's generally positive. It's hard to, looking back in a year, and thinking back to January 2020, if anyone had said, we'll have a vaccine in a year and it'll be in the arms of folks and making its way through the population, I think some of us would have struggled to see that would actually be achieved. So, I think it's just generally positive in terms of how we've been impacted, right, and how our process has changed. It's challenging time away from teams, your own internal team, as well as the teams you work with, your portfolio companies, and new targets, new deals that you're looking at. So I think the obvious challenge is, do investors write checks for things they haven't sort of put their hands on, and people they haven't met and face to face? I think you lose a lot through this two-dimensional interaction. But that being said, I think we've managed to find ways to address that, where we would normally be meeting people earlier in the process. We might be doing a whole lot more vetting, a whole lot more reference checks, and then ultimately culminating in visits when we think it meets that bar. So it's harder, it's more strategic in terms of when we can travel and how we travel. Hopefully that opens up really, really soon as the population really gets to that critical mass for vaccination. And we ourselves get in line, right, for the vaccine. So that hopefully will change I'd say in the second part of the year, second half of the year. But our process has changed slightly. I think it's also a recognition of how portfolio companies are addressing these challenges, right? Remote teams, there's probably going to shift to a sort of hybrid model of quasi-remote and quasi-in-office. And is that on a weekly recurring basis? Is that something that's 2-3 days a week in the office? So I think those are still getting fleshed out, and some companies are already designated their plans around that, but generally positive. Great.
Nat, you want to jump in? Anything changed on your side?
Sure. Well, I think we did get comfortable, like probably a lot of us here, meeting people via Zoom more than we had before. We're about to make our first investment in a company where we haven't met the management in person, in real life, which we had never done before. So I guess that's a positive. We saw a negative impact on portfolio companies, just, anybody servicing labs in that first quarter of the pandemic was pretty rough. Everything shut down, especially in academia. So yeah, Agilent's very aware of that problem. Yeah. Yeah. The whole world did. Everybody froze, but I think we all started to see over the summer, and then certainly more in the fall, people getting back to shifting schedules in labs and, back to work. And it's really good to see how the world adapted. I think we'll be better prepared. Like Daniela, we were amazed that the vaccines came so soon. Everybody I knew in vaccine development said, oh, 3 to 5 years, that's all you can do, and it was kind of a grim thought. So, I think we all are indebted to everyone who participated in that, and the world's better off because of that. Hopefully better prepared for the next one.
Great. Gary?
Well, I'll just echo what Nat and Daniela said. It's remarkable how the investors adapted, as well as the portfolio companies. Coda, we've done a number of deals with entirely virtual. It's remarkable how we got comfortable doing that. I think I speak for everyone, though. We long for the further easing of restrictions and going back to the face-to-face meetings that are so beneficial. In terms of the portfolio companies, it's been, some struggled more than others, but there's remarkable how adaptable these entrepreneurs have been in accommodating the different restrictions. And it impacted customers, obviously. It slowed down many. Many adapted to engage in supporting the effort, either in therapeutics or diagnostics. And like Nat said, it's been remarkable how successful that's been, and how many advances there's been in that field. In particular, I would point to, with the mRNA vaccines, the implications for gene and cell therapy, because some of those same methodologies are rapidly advancing for therapeutics and for diagnostics as well. So it's been a struggle, but we're very much looking forward to the further easing of restrictions. And I think there's certain things that have definitely accelerated, and it's giving us more confidence in our ability to interact like we are here remotely. And so I think we're hopefully be in an even better place as we go forward here.
Yeah, and just for the record, my first vaccination is on Sunday, so I'm getting there. Tom, did you raise money over this period, Tom?
Yes, yeah, we've raised about.
And how did that change? I know you have a lot of experience raising money. Can you go through that?
So Ted, it's obviously, I used to spend 70% of my time traveling, and it's gone to zero. And the upside is it's incredibly efficient. So for instance, to come to this conference, you could lose time, traveling both ways. And on also the plus side, many of these conferences, I've seen a level of activity here, at this conference that I haven't seen before. You have broader audiences, more international audiences, at these various conferences. So and saving travel time is really helpful. On the looking at it from the fundraising point of view, the negatives are that not everybody is as savvy or comfortable as perhaps this group. In a sense, we're by definition comfortable with this, and particularly for early stage investors, they tend to value the relationship and the determination of the people, because they don't have metrics like your compounded annual growth rate and things like that. And I'm seeing funds struggle, and I'm seeing them struggle with interacting with their partners, and so there's slower decision making. I feel the video fatigue, and I can see that many investors do as well. Just briefly on so it's pluses and minuses. I think there seems to be more openness to cold calling, as opposed to the warm contacts or semi-warm. So I do feel it's a little bit more open than it was. It's easier to make a direct contact because you have a mutual interest. I think people are more open to the non-visit, the non-warm. So I think that's a positive. By the way, just Ted's, we're a little tiny company compared to Agilent, but I think we're seeing the same in terms of the tool space and labs. There still are major organizations that don't allow in new vendors, and they're on shifts, and many, for somebody with a new product, point to the fact that they have instruments that they bought often from Agilent 6 months, a year ago. They're just now opening up and using, and we're not about to buy a new instrument until we're using what we have. And if you have a new product, it's a little more challenging to get acceptance and to train. I mean, we've developed some really great tools, but innovation in some ways can be a little bit harder without the personal touch, and to get somebody to make that leap of faith in a new product. And I'd say I'd see that a little bit among the venture folks as well, making that that leap of faith. But it's certainly a positive, greater use of technology.
Great. And thanks. You this is kind of a different line of questioning. But Tom, I'm going to pick on you first here. But so typically when we see pitch decks, if there's very little that says that it's less than a $1 billion opportunity, and usually it's a $5 billion opportunity. Can you help us understand from your perspective, and then I'll look at the VC perspective, how a VC would help you convert this opportunity space into actual, an actual market? These huge opportunities don't always translate into a market for the target or for the startup. Yeah.
So
when you look at it, Tom, do you see it as a $1 billion space, or are you focused on a specific market first?
So Ted, I think you're hitting at one of the actually the really important issues in investing in the tool space. And I continue to be surprised by despite there being some incredibly many successful large companies like Agilent and others, that there is not, I'm surprised there's not more investing in companies, startups like the one that we have. There's a mismatch there, and I have some theories. I'd love to hear more. And so I often ask this question of investors. I think Daniela, we talked about it in New York at I think we had a nice lunch, and why is it? And I think it has to do with the issue you raised, Ted, of the size of the opportunity. We are, I believe at Thrive, we are addressing a very broad market, because cell culture and stem cell culture, et cetera, is done across many of the fields. But so many of the investors that I talk to, and even listening to other tools companies sometimes presenting, there are a lot of tools companies that are very much niches and are limited by a workflow, or are constrained by a lack of knowledge within the field of how to use something new. So there has to be a kind of dissemination of information, about that. So it's, I think an issue, I think for somebody who is raising money in the tools area, they should think very, very strongly about, do they have a product or do they have a company? I mean, obviously, companies are built on products, but sometimes you have a really good idea and it's a niche product, and it should become a part of a larger company sooner rather than later, because it's perhaps additive, or it just simply won't be large enough, as you're speaking of, to be a venture type opportunity. And I think as entrepreneurs, it's a hard decision, but and to accept that, well, gee, maybe I don't have something here that's going to be $1 billion. But you know what? If you'll make money more if you accept that and come up with an alternative plan, which may be to license it out, or or to sell earlier. There's sometimes, in order to survive the the day-to-day difficulties of starting a company, you have to have that optimism, but you got to be realistic because there are a lot of really good tools out there, but they're never going to be $1 billion.
Right. And Gary, you span from successful founder to consultant to VC. How do you see venture capitalists helping to make this opportunity conversion into a real market?
Sure. Yeah, I have seen things from both sides of the table, working with early stage companies seeking funds, as well as now with investors evaluating. The way the investor, help. I mean, one of the key things that for early stage investors, I think our audience is mostly early stage. Often it starts with innovation, starts with great, some technology leap. But the way the investor can help often is the path towards commercialization. It's usually a very rocky road to getting a product out and accepted. Many entrepreneurs, some of them have that experience. They come from an industry, they've gone through it, but others, more recently out of universities, may not have that experience. But certainly, many of the investor panelists here in venture will have that experience or have a network that will bring that experience. So really helping in the commercial plan and reflecting back on the prior question of, the market opportunity, and it's important to have a longer term vision of a company that can grow into a larger market. But and this is where the investor can really help, is equally important is the near term plan of getting your initial product launched successfully, targeting the right segment of the market, and having a go-to-market plan. So as an investor, I look at both. I look at the longer-term vision that a group of entrepreneurs have, as well as their plan for getting their first product launch. And there you have to. It's not about a $5 billion opportunity. It's about a segment where your product is going to make a difference, and usually it's a small slice of that. And you should really understand what slice of that bigger market. What is that slice, and who are the influencers that you're going to first approach, and how to get there. And I think that can be a collaborative effort where your investor can add insights and referrals to really help you and guide you, or really question and pick apart your go-to-market plan. That interaction could be really supportive and helpful ultimately for our target audience here of early stage entrepreneurs.
Great. And Daniela, I know that Flow Design Sonics, because we talked to them, said really nice things about you're helping them move from this opportunity into a market. Can you tell a little about how you do that and how you engage?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really building some of the comments that Gary made, about how we engage and how we support. I think it's initially people will have an idea about what their technology can do, what market it serves, what customer, what problem it solves, really. And at the end of the day, it's right. What problem are you solving for a group of customers, preferably those who will pay to solve that problem. So that's kind of framing it for companies. And oftentimes, as I think Gary also mentioned, a lot of the technical founders in the space are really visionary, really driven, understand on a technical basis the benefits of their tech or their service or their solution. But often the translation of that into a marketing plan, pricing, how to position it against competition, does the technology inherently have, an order of magnitude better, what have you, yield, cost, labor reduction, et cetera, right? So
Yeah.
what is that measure that you're differentiating against everything else in the market? And I think it's a lot about looking at the utility, the problems, the issues that people are experiencing, getting that initial customer engagement. And I think this is kind of important where dynamic comes in, is sort of, at that point, you may have had some alpha and some early proof of concepts, but now it's about scaling and getting access to those decision makers and those thought leaders in the industry who will adopt your technology, who will talk about your technology, who will publish, and therefore get you the traction that you need with some of the bigger names. And there's ways of doing that, right? You can do that. We did with Flow Design and with a number of other companies, is basically put them in touch with those thought leaders that have the issues that the technology solves, and get them together around a sponsored co-development, something where at least they've got some money defraying some of those costs is great. Some engagement, it shows the level of engagement from a big organization, let's say a big biopharma. And if they can actually make that sort of milestone linked co-development plan, well, that's really compelling. And that becomes compelling for other investors who come in and say, wow, you've got, a co-development with the top 10 biopharma in the space. Fantastic, right? That's really validating. So it's really about getting them to that point. I think more prescriptively on product development, right? If you haven't done it before, you don't know what you don't know, and that's scary. So
yeah, we've seen some pretty scary tubes in a lab that they said is ready to ship. So
ready to ship tomorrow. It's scary because there's a lack of, maybe there can be a lack of understanding, especially when it comes to sort of GMP environments and requirements of customers in that space, and adopting it into processes. There's a lot of heavy lifting that has to go into that on the validation front, and security of supply, and all the questions that we're used to getting, right? We got that at Wave. We lived through that. Those are the things that I think really can hurt you, because you can be on this track. You can sort of be on the research use only and cranking along, and all we need to do is just this to get it for GMP, and that's a heavy lift. And not understanding that transition, that's I think also where we come in, and we'll challenge those assumptions and sort of understand. So when it comes to it, we may love a technology, but just not sort of see an easy path to GMP, or a longer path to GMP than what the entrepreneurs are thinking about.
Great. And Nat, how did you push 10x Genomics? Because I know we saw them early, and you invested, we didn't. So can you give some thoughts on how you helped steer them to be such a success, or some of your other companies?
Sure, Tad. 10x needed a lot less help than most. Just phenomenal team that came out of Quantum, a company that we also funded. And I think the things that Gary, Tom, and Daniela have said, are spot on. I would kind of funnel them into, a general issue which we're really focused on, which is the pace of adoption. And that gets, go-to-market plan, the sales process, the value to customers, all of that feeds into pace of adoption. Research and publications, and getting the news out. I mean, we don't care so much about whether the market's giant or tiny. I mean, you look at 10x as a good example. I mean, the single cell genomics market sort of didn't exist, really. So you couldn't say it's a big market, but it had big potential. But, even if it's a niche, I think, as Tom said, you can make money with a niche product, but it's absolutely critical that you not only have a breakthrough product that provides huge new value, or the abilities to do new things for your customer. But then you have to have a go-to-market plan that is reasonable, that the cost of selling, the cost of building a sales force, makes sense compared to the revenue you're going to get and, the consumable stream and all of that. So, if you've got a giant potential breakthrough area, you can build a sales force. If you don't, you have to recognize that early on, and you have to know what it's going to take to get, massive awareness so that you don't have to build a big sales force or figure out that you need a distribution partner. And there's pros and cons of that and lots of pitfalls. So, I think what we're all saying is you have to have a product that provides huge value to your customers. And to do that, you have to be very close to your customers. Danielle talked about, alpha product relationships and really understanding what they want. But there's a lot more to it than that, because time is money and you can't spend 4 years building awareness, and 4 years building a sales and marketing. You're better off selling to Agilent or someone else right away. Tom said it, you got to sell early, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. You can make, everybody can make a lot of money if you, don't put too much capital in and you sell early. And, then a big company that already has a sales force and already has the customers, can do it. And there's, I do see entrepreneurial teams that don't recognize that. And, you can take a good opportunity and squander it if you don't recognize that. But there's lots of opportunities for niches as well.
Great. And I'm going to let Tom sit back and listen to this one. But in the context of evaluating new technologies, I think the three of you talked about it. Can you give some insights into the internal dynamics of a venture capital firm around deal decision making? So think back on the last couple of deals, and what is the real answer? I know the answers we give to startups, but what's the real answer to why didn't you fund or invest in that company? Can you give some thought process to that, and also include in that what happens when partners disagree? How is that resolved internally? I know how it's resolved with Agilent, because my investment committee is Agilent's CEO, CTO, Senior Vice President of Strategy, and CFO. So if the CEO says no, we're done. But if you guys could give some insight into why you said no, and what happens in those meetings. Who wants to go first on that one?
I'll go.
No, they're all eager to. Go, Gary.
Yeah, well, with Coda Capital, and I think a lot of venture firms, I think it's analogous to what you do out at Agilent, Tad. We go through a process. We evaluate companies based on we call it the 5 Ps: the product, the predictability of the markets, the people, the price. All these elements are evaluated. The potential, which essentially is the market opportunity. So we do a thorough analysis, and then we try to come to a consensus, a group decision, and then ultimately we have an investment committee made up of partners in the firm who have to weigh in and approve any new investment. But there are a lot of good companies. I think you're kind of alluding to. There's a lot of great technologies and companies that you ultimately pass on, and sometimes it's not for those reasons. Sometimes it's a matter of balancing your portfolio and not having room for a similar technology, a similar company to one you already have. So there's a lot of reasons that investors will pass on an opportunity that sometimes don't have to do specifically with the opportunity. That said, though, it's this a process again of evaluating the merits of the technology and the people and the product and the markets, and then a process of reviewing that and seeking the approval of having our entire team on board. So we generally look to get that consensus to really feel good and be fully supportive, and that carries through through the life of the company. Because what we try to do is when we invest in a company, we want to continue to invest in that company, continue to support it through the life of that company. So it's very an important decisions. So I think that's the way we do it at Coda. It's probably pretty similar at most firms. I think maybe some of the smaller firms will, be able to make more instantaneous type decisions. But we have a process probably pretty analogous, I think, well, I know it's analogous to Agilent because I've been at Agilent and I've worked with you guys on many deals together.
Except we probably have much more paperwork than you do. So
you'd be surprised, though.
Daniela, Nat, can you give?
Absolutely. I mean, just to echo a little bit what Gary was saying, the why we didn't invest in a company question, I think is, sometimes it really is just too early. Sometimes it really is just, we need to see that company reach milestone X, and that'll give us the confidence, whether it's technology risk that gets mitigated or what have you. We see a lot of things that are super early. So
do you share that back with the company at all?
We do.
You say it's too early.
In fact, we genuinely try to go back to everyone and let them know what is it about this that gave us pause. Sometimes those conversations are hard. Believe me, it's hard on us too when we're trying to give that feedback, and gently. We know, it's like calling the baby ugly, right? You don't want to say that. It's just more about.
It's just cute in a different way. Yeah.
It's cute in a different way. We need to sort of think about, what is it, the milestone, the team wise, maybe gaps in the team that we believe, you need to be successful. A lot of times it comes down to the team. In other words, we love the tech. We think it has promise, but the team is too early, not experienced. Are they willing to be coached, or are they willing to get the feedback? And are they seeking the feedback, right? Are they actively looking for a partner, or are they just looking for a check? And in which case, we're probably not the right firm. But there are other firms that would maybe be better suited. And I think we genuinely really do try to go back to people because it helps the industry overall. And I think back to something, Coda and Dynamic have both co-led the selfie biotech seed round last in 2020, early 2020. And, is actually a great example. As a company, we were both watching for a while, and we both got to the point where we said, okay, now we see what we needed to see in order to make the investment and go forward. So just because we say no initially doesn't mean that we're a no forever, right? I think that's and then on the decision making, we have a process at Dynamic, which is since we started, we're unanimous. We really try to drive that consensus. The team provides input. I think one just side note that has come up a lot for us is an important concept about associates and principals in our teams, and not just the partners. They're really valuable part of our team, and they're really an important part of our team. And it's important for entrepreneurs to engage with those principals and associates, and not just try to sort of angle for the partner meetings, right? Because the heavy lifting gets done with the associates.
By Sebastian,
with the principals, Sebastian, Jessica. They're the ones who do the really heavy lifting, and it's important to build those relationships.
Great, thanks. Nat, anything to add there?
All good thoughts. Yeah, I'd add a couple of things. Daniela touched on are the entrepreneurs seeking feedback? And, I think it's really important if you're raising capital to seek feedback and be very persistent on getting detailed information from people who say, turn you down or say it's not time yet. Some people do a really great job of that. others don't do it at all. And they really miss opportunities and end up spending so much inefficient time fundraising because they don't ask. You know, it's like somebody trying to be a great athlete or a great musician or performer. I mean, you have to constantly look for coaching and improvement. And so you need to ask, hey, you know, what can I do better? What can we do better? You know, how does my team need to improve? How does my pitch need to improve? How does the overall business plan and product need to improve? You know, what
and in case no one noticed, my lights just went out because I'm sitting here so quietly.
You're doing jumping jacks.
Yeah, I need to do jumping jacks to get the lights back on in the room here.
So I think it's really important for people to ask, you know, how do we make it better? How do we get to a yes eventually? If not with you, with others. And, you know, most VCs want to be nice and we want to help. We really do, because it's very hard saying no frequently. And so you want to help, but you only have so much time. And so when people don't ask, you know, sometimes you just have to move on because, you know, they haven't inquired. But I think you can get a lot of really good input from the people who see hundreds of opportunities a year. And it can really help you build something better.
Yeah. And so most of you, that raises something else. Most of you sit on boards. When it comes time to look for new money, how do you all help the company do that? And Tom, you're going to be in on this one too. But let's start with Danielle on this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it's
is there a process that you help them work through, or introductions, or?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all of it. I think everyone's gonna have a similar response, but you know, maybe there's some nuance depending on, you know, your access to other investors and follow-on investors and the like. You know, in life science industrials, it's a small market. It's a niche market, and we a lot of us know each other, and there's a lot of as well a lot of strategics like yourself, Tad, that are interested in sort of those follow-on opportunities. So, you know, for us, it's you know, what is the round? What does it look like? What's the environment? What's the ability of the team to go out and raise this? And what do they need to be successful? It's not just to go out to raise money for a runway. It's, what are you raising this for? Are you raising it for a facility, for a GMP product, for, you know, launching to a peripheral market, expanding your sales force, what have you? You know, what is it that you're going to generate in returns from raising that money? So it starts with that difficult conversation of, you know, where do we think we can go with this, and what do we need to achieve that? And then it's about refining that story, and, you know, who are the likely participants, who would be interested in it. Now, of course, I'd say in the last 3 or 4 years, that landscape is increasing dramatically, and it's great. It provides more opportunity for follow-on investment, more opportunity for partners who come in with different levels of expertise and different levels of support to those entrepreneurial teams. So yeah, we make introductions. Sometimes we'll help them with the pitches and help them with refining the messages and help them just practice, because at a different level, you know, there's different things that people like Nat and Gary will look for, versus Tad, yourself. I think you'll look for different things. So that's about refining and crafting the messages.
Yeah, technology pitches are really important to strategics. We're pretty arrogant in that we think we know our market sizes. So yeah.
Yeah, careful with
that. Tom, any thought on how VCs have helped you build the investment out?
So you mean board?
People on board or
right.
VCs that are investors in you. How have they helped you raise money?
If I could, Ted, I was dying to make a couple of comments about the previous
Sure.
Question about decision making by venture firms about companies, and there were some really good points made. I think about I try to, but it really reminds me to always ask for feedback. Right? I mean, the smartest people act the most humble and realize that they can learn, and in my view, the least smart people think they know everything, and it you can learn from every interaction. You spent the time interacting with a firm, why not ask that question? So Nat, I thought it was a really good point. And Daniela, for people in the audience raising money, it is amazing that people might overlook the associates or principals, but they, in the end, do a lot of the work, and they're the gatekeepers to what may get on the desk. And if often one of the frustrating things in raising money is that you didn't get the point across that you were trying to, or it was misinterpreted, and people like Sebastian, or I know him, not the other person you referenced, can really make a difference. I would say, if you don't mind my just mentioning, Tad, that the big frustrations in raising money is not getting feedback and getting a slow no. And it may be painful to say no, but it helps us when we get it faster. And I find when I talk to somebody, like Daniela, who may have just been raising money, they're reminded of that because they're in that same, same position. One of the frustrations also I find in raising money is in tools, we often are crossing hardware and software, and there are many firms that have tight pigeonholes. And to me, one of the really fantastic developments within venture field is that there are more smaller funds that often are more willing to cross these fields. The number of firms are often the larger, the ones that have been around. Well, you're not a device company, you're not a diagnostic, you're not pharma, you're not biotech, you're not software, you're not hardware. We don't know what to do with you is, really unfortunate. And so it's really helpful when you meet somebody kind of, creative. And just, quickly, since I took, some of that time, I would, what Daniela said really, I think is the set of things that are really helpful from a board is, to give you that advanced perspective, the word messaging, it really is, how do you come across? And you don't always realize the nuance of what you say might make people think that, gee, it sounds like you're selling a customized instrument. Well, you're not, but you said it in a way, that maybe, it appeared that way. So, you never get enough practice. You never get enough eyeballs on your deck. And obviously also the introductions are incredibly helpful. I've been lucky. It's probably one of the best boards I've ever had. And I invite them very early into meetings with customers, meeting with investors, and they appreciate it incredibly, because as a board member, you're always wondering kind of what's management doing, what's going on. And I think the firms, the investors have appreciated it as well. This guy's transparent, he's open, he's willing to, have them be a part of it. And I actually find that when I talk to other entrepreneurs, they're afraid to ask their board for help because they are incredibly busy, but they actually really want to know what's going on in the company. And so to invite them to, when the team is making, there's the partner visit, it's important. And, for them to actually hear what we do and how we present ourselves, they appreciate, and I think the investors appreciate.
Yeah, and Tom, Joey's about to cut us off. I'm pretty sure. So, because I think we're at time. Joey, you're about to cut us off?
No worries. You guys can finish off.
I just wanted really quickly, because one of our startup companies had this question about biggest pet peeves. So it just really quickly, one or two words. Gary, biggest pet peeve about entrepreneurs?
Oh gosh, I don't.
That's one or two words.
I
Nat, Nat, I'll ask you.
Understanding what's needed in the team.
Okay, Daniela?
Uh,
Oh, sorry, that's all you get.
don't say you don't have any competitors.
Oh, there you go. Tom, biggest pet peeve about venture capitalists?
That's a good one. I'd say not giving that quick no if it's not going to work out, and I'd say number two, those people who are just unable to make a decision without more and more and more data are just very frustrating. And I try to triage it, figure out, is this somebody who just will never
Make a decision? Yeah. Nat, biggest pet peeves about presentations?
I think Daniela's point, lack of competitive information. You
There you go.
really need to be very honest and do your research about your competition.
Gary?
Just when you're just there's so many buzzwords and trendy things, but really my advice would be really understand your audience, your investor, and be attentive to their interesting questions.
Got it. Daniela?
Yeah, I think it goes to the know your company and your market inside and out, know what you need, and know about the investor you're talking to.
Yeah, mine is 20 megabyte decks arriving. So, Tom,
mine is no page numbers. Or,
there you go. and finally, let me ask, strategic investors. What are your thoughts on strategic investors in your companies? I know putting you on the spot, but.
I mean, we as you know, Ted.
Yeah, we're in three together, so.
Yeah, we're in this time. There's quite a few. There's strategic investors that add perspective. So they're really an important part of the ecosystem. So very pleased to have them.
Daniela.
Strategics are a critical part of the ecosystem, as Gary said. So I think we're absolutely happy when they're participating. I think the message for entrepreneurs is just keeping those lines clear of right of first refusals and things like that, to give you the flexibility. But I think that ultimately those are really positive relationships, really compelling relationships, and we love to see those.
Yeah, we don't invest if another strategic has right of first refusal and market access restrictions anyway. But Nat, any thoughts on strategics?
Strategic investors can be wonderful. With if they have the attitude like Agilent has, where it's generally no strings attached,
yep.
That can be super beneficial for everybody.
Great. Tom?
Absolutely love them. The difficulty is that it generally takes much longer because you have not only to have to find strategic alignment or mutual area of interest, and you have to meet of a good investment, and often you have to have this complex relationship with one of the divisions. Sometimes that's required, sometimes it's not. But there are more hurdles to go through, and so it does take more time. But usually for us entrepreneurs, it's refreshing talking to somebody who invests who has really done it before. Really, there are some VCs that that have. There are many who haven't. So I would say great, but you got to allow a lot more time, and sometimes it's you get involved in the middle of politics between the divisions, and you're viewed as a competitor to them, and they get defensive. It's just a whole laundry list that makes it more difficult.
Great, and I'll take that as general positive. So,
yes,
I
wish it was easy.
Great. I'd really like to give my sincere thanks to all of my brilliant and inspirational colleagues for providing the insights. today. I think it's been really helpful for the audience, and I trust that that with the audience, with startups, and as a group, we can bring some great new technologies to the market with, I think, all of our ultimate goal of keeping patients healthy worldwide. So you all be safe. Look forward to talking to you soon. Joey, is there anything else you need from us?
Nothing else from me. I just want to thank you all so much for a great discussion, and thank you, Ted, for moderating this panel.
Yeah, thank you all. Have a great day. Talk soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.